Kelly Mitchell, the Wine Siren. I am here today with Bob Brakesman,
Summit
Summit.
Lake.
Thank you. Vineyards, and we're
And there
in.
is no Summit Lake.
There is no. There isn't.
No.
Well, how did we get the name?
Road is called Summit Lake. And the road kind of follows the summit and it overlooks the Friesen Lakes, which is Angwin's water supply.
Ah,
But there is no Summit Lake at Summit
it
Lake.
couldn't have been, the pioneers that were hoping there was a lake at the top of the mountain when they got
I would
here.
I would like to think something like that, but
Okay. Now, there's a really interesting story behind the acquisition of this property,
yes,
and we're talking about the 70s sometime. What year was it?
71.
71.
Yeah.
And can you tell me about the first time that you laid your eyes on this beautiful location?
I'd been helping a friend build a house over at Point Reyes, and Sue and I were living in San Jose at the time. I just finished school, and so I go out and help Tom build his house. And I always came back through Napa Valley
Hmm.
because I'd been making home wines and really wanted to make wine, grow grapes, make wine. And this one realtor showed me everything in the valley, and you couldn't afford it in 71 anyway. You know, it's
Wow.
so expensive. And then this one realtor said, Bob, there's this little kind of rundown ranch up in Angwin. You want to see that? And I go, where's
Where's
Angwin?
Angwin?
Or what is Angwin? I think was, what is it? So he brought me up here, and the place is such a dump, so overgrown. Um, it's like 2 months after being here, I find a Caterpillar tractor right underneath those trees over there.
Oh
Well,
my
you couldn't
goodness.
see it. You had to crawl hands and knees to get to it. Okay, so coming back from Point Reyes, I always stop and talk to this one realtor, and he says, do you want to come up and see it? And he brought me up here, and the place is just run down. There were people living in the house that threw their garbage out the back window.
Oh boy.
Um, and at that time, it was 28 acres with a barn and a couple outbuildings and the house, which is built in the 1890s
Wow.
sometime and poorly remodeled ever since.
And how old were you when you went
25.
25 years old?
Yeah, she's all excited. Just wow, our own place. Now, Gloria also, Gloria knew about this just about all. That's Sue's mom.
Oh, okay.
I kept her up to date
Okay.
because sometimes I'd be sneaking off somewhere, to go get supplies or something, and she'd cover for me. And so I give Sue this card, and she breaks into tears and said, "We'll go up Christmas." And so Christmas Eve, I bring her up here. It probably rained 40 inches by that time. So far that winter, very heavy rainfall. No paved roads, and so I bring her up here. It's dark. It's raining. You had to make sure you're going fast enough to some areas of the road because it was just too soft, you'd sink. And I bring her up here and turn down the driveway, and I'm happy. I just go, God, shoot, this is it. Wow. And she starts crying. And pardon my French, but she goes, Bob, what the fuck have you done? So we go in. There's not enough firewood to get a good fire going. It was freezing cold. All the windows were closed, but there's still this air movement through the place. And so finally, we just decided to go to bed, and because you needed a warm body next to you.
Yep.
And we left the window open to listen to the rain. And so early in the morning, it was light outside, but very early. I woke up, and it was the most amazing thing that I've never heard silence like that. I mean, there was no background noise at all, and it's spooky. I was kind of going, this is spooky. I'm so used to living in a city where there's always this background noise. You can't believe how loud it really is till you come up. And then I look over my dresser, and there's 4 inches of snow on my dresser.
From the
Kind of
open
blowing
window.
in the window. And so soon I get up, we're naked and we're looking out at the property. And she goes, God, this might work. If
Oh my
everything's so virgin
goodness.
and clean and pure. Um, then we tried to make breakfast. That was a failure too.
So that's the story about discovering the property and
Yeah.
bringing your wife into the loop. What
she got to love it.
it sounds
Yes.
like, well, the day 2, she's a convert already, right? With the snow and,
Yeah.
she sees what your vision was. When did you first like were the vineyards planted then? They were planted, weren't they?
There were some vineyard planted. It was mostly in Zinfandel,
Okay.
but there was kind of mixed blacks in there. So you had Zinfandel, Petit Syrah, and Carignan. And we kind of saved 4 acres of that, and it produced about a quarter ton per acre. So,
It's
we got
decent.
maybe 2 tons. Wow.
Absolutely. Wow.
And that went into home wines.
Okay.
And along with that, I'm also learning that I need to go work in a real, real honest winery. That's when I went to work for Freemark. Um,
And how long were you at Freemark?
7 years.
And what kind of position did you start as?
Well, cellar rat.
Cellar rat
Yeah.
first? That's
And then
that's
I was
pretty
cellar
standard.
supervisor, or
Okay.
I guess that was my official title, was cellar supervisor. Um, but just a wonderful place to work. Chuck Harpy was a wonderful guy. um,
So
but like all the people that came through there, they were all interns. Now you had Jerry Looper as the winemaker.
okay.
Brad Webb was the enologist, and Brad worked for Gallo for about 30 years,
Hmm.
and he was very high in their echelon. And then his brother, Dinsmore Webb, Denny Webb, was chair of viticulture and enology at UC Davis.
Oh, okay.
So we had a lot of interactions going on between there, and every year we'd get 2 Davis students, um, just kind of work the crush,
Right.
learn what's going on. Most of them didn't know anything mechanical. Show them a pump and they had no idea. You it only goes in one direction, but um, just such a nice place to work.
So tell me a little bit about the differences, like from the 10,000-foot view for the people out there that might be thinking that they could do their own home brew. Um, what
Well, they could,
they can,
yeah, they
right?
can,
But how does it
and
taste?
a lot of times the home wines are exceptional,
Really?
and they're kind of exceptional because you don't have any of the flora and fauna that are that could attack our wines.
Okay.
And we have to monitor those, just make sure that we're on top of them.
Yeah.
But a lot of the home winemakers, they're using everything's brand new or clean,
Okay.
so they don't have any problems with them. And usually they spend so much time on like one barrel or half a barrel, that they really make
That's
good
almost a
stuff.
year's worth of wine.
Yeah, and then there's other times when I've had people come up as home winemakers and say, "Bob, you got to try this." They're absolutely awful, you know. So you got the full spectrum.
So it can go
Uh,
either way.
the other way though is usually oxidation, because for the home winemaker it's hard to control oxidation. When you're dealing with 1,000-gallon tank and you have a
Hmm.
little head space, you can deal with that. But it's just harder for them to do small lots.
Got it. And so you took this home-based, make your own wine business to a whole new level, right? I mean, how many at the
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how many cases at kind of the height of when you were producing the wine were you making?
We were doing about 4 barrels, 3 or 4 barrels here.
Okay.
78, we did some custom crush at Smith Madrone Winery. And Stu, they made wine for me.
Okay.
And that was our first commercial release because although most of the wine was made here,
Hmm.
but on the books it showed being made at Smith Madrone. Can I say that?
Of course. Absolutely. And
I
it's
hope
now
I'm not getting.
Madrone, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't want.
No, nobody's gonna hear.
But
um,
Smith Madrone as Smith Madrone doesn't exist anymore, correct? Because it's
I
now
think it
just
does.
Madrone, isn't it? I
I
think
thought
this,
they still.
oh, it still does. Okay.
Yeah,
Now I'm going to get in trouble.
yeah. But Stu and Charlie are just the greatest guys. Yeah, I've known Stu for quite a while.
And so what do you love most about this whole process? The vineyards, the farming,
I like the hard work.
the
Getting
hard work?
out there 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning, working really hard. He's smiling, I know, right now.
Are you still doing that today?
Yes, actually.
Wow.
I try and do as much as I can in the vineyards, which is mostly just tractor driving
Okay.
and spraying and things like that. Um, it's getting so complicated now with all the regulations you have. For me to train, I would have to train somebody to spray, make sure they went to classes to
Mm.
handle pesticides correctly. And oftentimes they don't do a very good job.
Ah,
So, I'll do that spraying and disking, things like that, and mowing. I do that. But for the big things like pruning, we make a summer pass through to drop fruit and remove leaves and harvest. Those are all done by a large crew. So everything's done by hand, except for the disking, but um, it's all picked by hand. There's no machines involved there. So
beautiful.
you just need a whole lot of people.
Absolutely.
To get back to the home wines here, after a few years, it it became an institution that we'd have to let people know we're going to have a harvest party on some weekend. People would start arriving Wednesday, Thursday, setting up their tents. It was like Tent City, or what's the place in Nevada that you can go to? That
Burning Man.
Burning Man.
It's
Yeah,
like
it's kind of like
Burning Man.
the first Burning Man. And so after a couple of years, and I'm all set to go. It's Saturday morning. All these people, all my buddies are going to go out and pick grapes. And a friend of mine, McGuckin, made some brownies.
Uh-oh.
And I took one bite of these brownies and spit it out. I could just tell, and I go, oh, God, I better not do that because I'll. So I'm in there cleaning the equipment, and about an hour goes by. Where are those guys? They should have been in with the first load. And now thinking about it, another hour goes by, and I walk out there. Can I have the Zinfandel label or Zinfandel wine? So here's about 20 people out there sitting underneath the grapevines,
Eating grapes.
eating grapes and looking at them
We
and
have to
eating them too, which
we
is the
have to
big,
show everybody this. So just like this bottle, right?
yeah,
People are out in the vineyards
yeah.
eating grapes. So would you call that the munchies from the brownies?
Actually, they were just so stoned.
I love it.
So it
What a
took about
great story.
another
Was
hour,
this in the 60s or the 70s?
70s. So
70s.
we bought
That's
the ranch in
hilarious.
71,
I love
and
it.
this may be 74, 75, something like that.
Hmm.
Um, so finally we get the crew in there, and they're sure working slow. But we got it all crushed. Had a fantastic party that night, and then Sunday we bottled the wine from 2 years before, and everybody usually woke up with a headache or something like that. So we got
Yeah.
bottling the wine. You have to test it first
Right.
before it goes in the bottle. So drank a lot of wine there, and then people would kind of leave with a case or two of wine, and those are great parties.
It
Infamous parties.
sounds like it. Oh my
Infamous.
goodness. Burning Man up in Angwin. You were a trendsetter.
I guess maybe.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell me a little bit about now you've got your family involved in the vineyard big time, right?
Well, they
When
were they were always involved. I mean,
always.
just as children, I'm out here working on a tractor, and they want to climb on the tractor and learn how to drive it. And can I drive the tractor? Especially this guy. Heather was on her ponies and horses, but they were always here and part of it. Um, and it's nice they kind of came back to work on it, amazingly
Absolutely.
enough.
Oh yeah,
And even my
absolutely.
younger boy, Danny, um, he's working at Raymond now. But hopefully he'll get involved here too.
Is he doing kind of the same thing that you did, like
Yeah,
going
he's
out
a
to,
cellar rat.
okay.
Yeah, uh, and it's good because he's kind of learning somebody else's sanitization procedures,
Hmm.
so I don't have to kind of tell him, this is the way I do it or something. But
Right.
he's just going to do it, learn it from somebody else, and then if he wants to be involved, hopefully we'll get him involved.
That's fantastic. What are you most proud of about Summit Lake?
Most proud of. I think just that it still exists. And my children are here with
Hmm.
me, working on the place. So just that, um, kind of the camaraderie. It's not camaraderie. Um, I
The
don't know.
fact that you get
But
to work with your family
yeah.
on something
But you
that,
know, every once in a while though,
yeah,
I just kind of sit back with real pride, that just going,
absolutely.
we're doing pretty good, being halfway there now. So,
Another
uh,
50 years and
but when I first looked at grapevines, you figure a grapevine is good for 40, 50 years.
right.
So we started ripping out some of the old stuff that we'd saved. We'd rip out an acre of that, replant it, and those vineyards start to come into production, and all of a sudden we got 6 or 8 or 10 tons. Well, this you don't do in your basement.
No.
Uh, so that was getting difficult. And we sold some grapes. Um, but yeah, just kind of looking back with pride that we're here where we're at.
Where you started, yeah. And you've got the family on board too. That is
Th-
amazing.
then you try and think of all the things that aren't done yet or need to be done.
The list never
And
ends,
it
right?
never
You'll
ends.
never be bored or
Yeah,
retired for that matter.
farmers can't retire.
No, they
Just
can't. Well, the beautiful thing is to see a family-owned winery in a really special place like Summit Lake, and that you've not been acquired, you're continuing to
it really is.
perpetuate the
Heather had a
brand.
tasting the other day, and I was out spraying, and I didn't realize there was tasting. They were having a tasting right here. Well, I was kind of using wash water. I'm cleaning the sprayer, so I sprayed it out in this little block right there, and I had to come in this direction, make a turn, and I didn't know that anybody was here, and I just kept on going. Later, Heather came back and said she had the tasting going and kind of interested in what we were doing. And Heather goes, "Yeah, that's my dad." Guy goes, "What? Really?"
In the vineyard,
In the vineyard.
like you've always been, right?
Well, it's also the vineyard really takes a lot of time to um, get it in production, get it looking good.
Hmm.
Mother Nature isn't very nice about some of the things that she throws at us.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's some new viruses out there that they're just starting to understand the viruses and isolate them. So we're on a couple areas. We're on our third replant.
Wow.
So the 50 years of one grapevine didn't work. I figured we'll plant them, and it's good for 50 years. Well, 50 years is good. Then you retire or die or something like that. Well, the vineyards just don't last that long. If it's not phylloxera or some of the other viral diseases, something get them, mildew or fungus, eutypa,
So what is your favorite wine?
Zin.
The Zin.
Yeah.
A favorite, do you have a
And
favorite year?
yeah, I think it's very prejudiced. Probably the 78, um, and there's another one, 79. Um,
So can
but
people
but
call up
in
and still get that 78 and
no,
79?
no.
No.
And a friend of ours, Steve Molds, um, was kind of our library. So Steve would come up, we'd party and everything, and when he left, he'd take 6 or 8 or 10 cases with him, and he kept them in his cellar, and he had a very extensive cellar, but he was kind of our library.
Wow.
So if I needed a 78, I'd phone up Steve. Steve, do you have any? Can you get me a bottle of 78? And he would, and then at that time he was living in Los Altos. He's now up here in Napa Valley growing grapes,
Oh my
and he's
goodness.
the president of the Grape Growers Association
Association.
up here too.
Fantastic. Is he still hanging on to those 78s for you?
No, they're
No,
gone.
they're gone.
They're gone.
That was a fantastic
He could
vintage.
probably go back to late 80s, something like that. Um,
That's beautiful. Okay, so I want to thank you for joining me and sharing your story, especially how you founded the vineyard and introduced your wife to the property and the first snowfall. It's pretty
yeah,
remarkable stuff.
really was. But just looking out at that snow and it being so silent too, that was
Mm,
the other thing. And Sue just kind of going, well, this might work.
that's beautiful.
10 months later, she's pregnant.
Uh-oh. Is that Brian or Heather?
Heather. And she goes, Dad, Bob, I'm pregnant. Isn't that great? And I go, wait a minute.
Wait,
Wait a minute. You're pregnant? How'd that happen?
you can't do that.
Yeah. And she just goes, shut up, Bob. You're going to be a father.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, dear.
And then you had to work a little bit faster to get the
Well,
wines going.
then Brian came along.
Right
Danny.
after?
Yeah, funny thing.
Okay, that's a wrap.